When you're watching Carrie, and when I say Carrie, I don't mean the 2012, I mean the 1974 version. So there's something about the 1974 version. There's more horror to it. There's more that kind of classic, kind of vintage style. Well, I guess it's not vintage, but just the style of the movie, the time period that it's filmed in the 70s. It just feels more horrifying in a way. And I actually think that the story modernized, or like in the modern setting, it looks good. I mean, it's the same story. It's not bad, but I don't know. When you get to the prom scene, when you get into the gymnasium, when you get to the blood of it all, it just feels more, it feels a lot more horrifying when you see it in the old school style rather than the modern way. Although the visuals are very updated and the cars and the whole thing, but I don't know. I like the 1974 version a lot better, and it fits a lot better with the times there. Like if they were to remake it now, you know what I mean? I don't know. It wouldn't fit because all of that bullying, all of that nonsense that was happening back in the day, it just wouldn't work today, I think. I mean, you could make an argument for cyberbullying, but it doesn't have the same effect. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, we all know the story, right? Like little Carrie, high school teenager Carrie is abused and bullied at school, and then she's abused and bullied at home. She finds out that she has telekinetic powers whenever she feels really sad or upset or she's having a mental breakdown and whatnot. And then poor Carrie, right, is like constantly being abused by her mother, who's telling her that her periods are a sin and that she's not a child of God or whatever. And then her classmates at school are bullying her because she's freaking out because apparently her own mother didn't even give her own, like, you know what I mean? They didn't even tell her what her period was, so it just became like a whole freak out. And then the kids at school were like, oh, she didn't even know what her own body's doing. Like, she's such a weirdo and all this other stuff. And then she has like some mortal enemies who just hate her for no reason. And then they get in trouble and then they can't go to prom. So now it's all of a sudden Carrie's fault for them being like, I don't know, just for them being bullies. Anyways, then we see that Carrie gets invited to the prom. You know what I mean? And she got a good little man candy on her arm. She goes to the prom, even though her mom says not to. She goes anyways, and her bullies who aren't supposed to be at the prom drop pig blood all over her, and then she starts freaking out because now she's like, everybody's only doing this to humiliate me. And she's having like a mental breakdown, and now her telekinetic powers are coming out, and she starts killing everybody in the gymnasium. Her prom date, the prom king right next to her, a bucket falls on his head and he dies. And then she just like starts attacking everybody at the school. All the good stuff. She stops a car with her mind, you know what I'm saying? Like crazy stuff. Now, do I think Okay, let's back it up here. She starts going crazy at the gymnasium scene. The prom scene is where it all goes down, right? Now, while I don't think they should do a reboot or like a remake of Carrie, because it just wouldn't work, and a sequel could never work because Carrie's supposedly dead, not really dead. Who really knows? But I feel like it's been too long for them to do a sequel. It just doesn't work. But what I think they could do is they take the same Carrie story and they reimagine it. Okay, now what do I mean by that? So take the big moment, right? Her getting the pig dumped on her head, the pig blood dumped on her head, right? And all over her. That's the big moment. That's the huge thing that we see throughout the movie. Now, what she ends up doing is she closes the whole gymnasium and she starts killing the students. She starts killing the teachers. crazy stuff starts going down, and then she like leaves the gymnasium, and then her bullies try to run her over with the car. She stops the car and she kills the bullies and whatnot. Then she goes home and she fights her mom and blows up the house and everything. But what I think is really the important part here isn't the, obviously it makes sense to have the context of like the build up, you know what I mean? And then that climax of like her finally breaking down and getting her vengeance on those who have wronged her and bullied her after all this time. But I think that there's a little element to where it's like, we all know that story, you know what I mean? Like, that's why you have to reimagine the story. You can't tell it the exact same way, So if you are going to do it differently, I thought that, you could obviously do it in a way that's still pays homage to the original, but goes in a completely different direction. So it would be like you get the prom scene first at the beginning of the movie, okay? And you start seeing her going crazy with her telekinetic powers. Except the difference here would be she doesn't close off the gymnasium. Everybody escapes. All of her classmates or people attending the prom, they run away. Okay? And the rest of the movie is her chasing down her fellow classmates at prom. That whole prom night. So she stops people at the parking lot, getting into their cars. She starts destroying this, destroying that. She chases people down to the woods like crazy. And as we see her chasing down a different classmate, we see her emotional and mental connection to each of them. So like her bullies would be kind of the last ones. And they would be the last ones because they would be the most cathartic revenge, you know what I mean? But it's just kind of her getting her revenge against her classmates who either bullied her or sat back and let it happen, including the teachers, And so we would get little flashbacks and context for like how she was mistreated throughout the night, as we watch Carrie like stumble throughout the woods or the city or the town or whatever, and we see her do some crazy telekinetic horrifying stuff. We see that like, oh, this person was harassing her, this person could have done something and they did nothing, this person could have, you know what I mean? So many passive people and people who she felt like was laughing at her, and so it just goes to show that like throughout the movie, we just see that's the story. And then obviously we get the flashbacks of her being scared of her period. We get the flashbacks of her mom being horrible to her. We get the flashbacks of like, maybe she went to the principal or the teacher and they did nothing. And then we went to see like how people were harassing her, how it was all a plot. Like she starts putting the pieces together of like who was actually wronging her. And then by the end of the story, we see that she's gone down to such a low place that she's like, I just don't even want to, as suicidal as it may be, she's like, I don't even want to live anymore. So she starts like ruining and I don't know, she's already ruined up until this point. Like she's destroyed her life. You know what I mean? She's killed people. I would even have her fight against the police. I think that would be really interesting because she doesn't have any respect for authority figures because the teachers and the principals and other people like who are supposed to help her and take care of her have done nothing. And so now when she's met with the actual threat of violence by the police, she has to like fight them back and she wins, you know what I mean? Because the rest of the story needs it. But then she encounters the one person who is like maybe nice to her and it rebalances her mental stability, and she's found a way to use her telekinetic powers and abilities while she's level-headed and in a smart thinking place. So instead of killing the last student or whatever, right? I guess instead of I forget the character's name. I think it's Sue. But instead of murdering or attacking or hurting Sue, because she would be like the last one to like survive the night or whatever, she instead chooses to go home and go after the last person she needs to get revenge against. and it's damn near daybreak, and she meets up with her mom, and now she's level-headed. Now it's like kind of like a more calculated killing, and we kind of see how I guess maybe their relationship has changed. And then her mom sees Carrie covered in blood, and she's like, "What happened to you?" And she's like, "You're a witch. You're this. You're that." You know what I mean? All of that stuff. And we finally see Carrie like stand up for herself, or like confront her mom, and her mom is like threatened by this, and she tries to stab her, but Carrie stops her, kills her own mom, and then burns down the place, all while, you know what I mean, just feeling like, ruined. You know what I mean? It's like, this is what her life has become. And then we get kind of like another... Then we get the whole thing with the girl, Sue, I think that's her name. Sue, she has that dream about visiting Carrie's home, and then we see Carrie's hand come out of the ground or whatever. And, Sue's screaming and crying and like going crazy. But then she wakes up, and then like her mama's like, "It's all okay, it's all okay, it's all okay." And then I thought it might be interesting if it's like a curse. You know what I mean? It's like a continuation, or it's not like Carrie got like a curse. You know what I mean? Like, let's say she is like a sort of witch descendant, right? She, by sparing like Sue at the end, right? Like, she was supposed to kill everybody. By sparing Sue at the end, she unknowingly like cursed Sue next with like horrible and misery and stuff. And so now Sue also has telekinetic powers, and then her mental state is going to decline, and the legacy will continue on. You know what I'm saying? Is like, that's the point, is that you're not going to get Carrie anymore, but you're going to get like another woman or another character with these telekinetic abilities that are actually linked to misery and pain and a declining mental state. So as the generations pass on, you find all of these instances of horrible supernatural things, or somebody who like went on a rampage and killed some people, and then like the sole survivor who lived to tell the tale, or who knew the quote unquote assaulter or the killer. They come around like years later, and they commit like another horrible crime, and then somebody's like investigating all of it. It's like a continuation of the curse, is that as long as somebody lives, they're gonna also suffer the same curse. You know what I mean? And I thought that might be like a cool way to keep the story going, as like a way to keep Carrie's legacy alive, is that like it's never over. The story is never over. It's always going to be, until they have the guts to like, I don't know, what do you call it? Until they have the will to kill everybody, including themselves. But that's the point about like the mental state or whatnot, is that they'll always have some sort of compassion or soft spot for somebody in their life. It just so happened Carrie's was Sue, and she lived that night, against Carrie, and then the next person in Sue's life, like maybe her daughter, like Sue has a daughter later on down the line, and then Sue gets into like sort of this not that she becomes a bad mom, but she starts facing like struggles in adulthood, and then she has to deal with being a mom, and then she unknowingly just like gets fired from her job. You know what I mean? Like, just stuff like that. That's what I think about, when I think about Carrie now and like the legacy of it. I don't think a remake would. A remake now of it would just be a waste of time, I think. Or it wouldn't even if you could do it perfect justice, you wouldn't capture the same essence as the 1974 version. There's just no way. That time period was just, it just fit the style so much better than you could ever replicate. Now, is it possible to like visually tell the story better and have the script or the cinematography of it all? Like, I'm sure you could get some gorgeous shots and it would be great, but it just, I don't know, it just, it wouldn't work. Like I said before, they tried to do it with the 2012 version of Carrie, and it's okay. I'm not going to say it's bad, but it's definitely not like, I don't know, what would you, it's just like, oh yeah, they did it again, you know. I don't know. It's not that interesting, I guess. It's not as interesting as back in the day. But anyways, yeah, I think the first time I watched this movie, I was like, well, I was initially interested, or the first snippet I saw of this movie was the 2012 version. And when I got older, I was like, oh, you know, I was like maybe 15 or 16 years old. I was like, oh, let me watch this movie. It was like a horror movie at the time or whatever. And I don't know. I think I was just kind of like, not that I avoided horror movies. I just wasn't a big horror movie guy. So whenever I saw like a horror movie being made, I was just like, I don't know if I want to watch that. But then eventually I was like, maybe let's warm up to the idea. And I started watching movies like Woman in Black and The Nun, or whatever horror movie were coming out that year, or anything that I could find on like, I guess, Netflix or whatever. And or like little YouTube clips of like some horror, like the best horror movies or the best horror films or like all that stuff. And I came across the Carrie movie, and I was like, oh, let me watch that. And then come to find out that it's a remake of an older film. So then I watched the older one, and comparatively, I mean, even then I knew, like, the older Carrie version, it just, even though it was older, I just felt that there was a lot more, it just felt a lot more creepy to me. The modern version of it, it just was like, you know, it didn't feel plausible. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like creepy. It didn't feel scary to me. But the 1974 version of it, I just remember I watched that for the first time, and I just like, when she got the blood poured on her face and the smile she had, and then the bucket drops, and then she's covered in blood, and then the look on her face afterwards. That's true horror. That's true creepiness right there. And then obviously from that moment on, you kind of get an idea of like, oh yeah, she's about to kill everybody. You know, it's just one of those moments, classic cinema moments. And, you know, I didn't really dwell on it all that much. I kind of was like, not that I was indifferent towards it. I didn't find it scary. It's just that I was never been like, I don't know. I guess the best way to put it is that, like, I don't worry too much about horror movies or like get freaked out by them too much as I do like I guess maybe bad endings or like unhopeful endings, right? Like this movie Carrie ended on like she died, you know what I mean? Supposedly, you know what I mean? But I'm talking about movies where it's like like I remember I watched the movie Get Out, and at the end of the movie, right, you see how like he kills all of the people. I mean, spoilers for Get Out. Not that you wanted to hear it, but it's like he kills all of the people at the end, and then the cops show up, and then it turns out to be his friend, and you're like, oh, awesome, you know what I mean? Like, it's a hopeful moment. It's like joy, you know what I mean? But there was an alternate version where it was like the actual police, and then he goes to prison and stuff. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, is that like where there's no hope. That those are the ones that I kind of get more upset about and dwell on than like the actual like, I don't know, the actual thing of it itself. But anyways, I think I'm veering off topic here. What I'm talking about is I wasn't like spooked by the movie. I could understand it and I could feel like, oh, that's cool. And then as I watched more horror movies, you know, I feel like I was a lot more desensitized to it. I felt like the action or their choices or all of the bad stuff that they do is just, it just felt like comedy. It's like, how did they get into this situation? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's like they could have easily avoided this if they had done that. And it just like me making fun of them and mocking them, and you know, then you watch like other people on social media, like they're making fun of horror movies too, and it's just all of those ideas just seem impossible or not plausible. Like you just don't see it. So I think people find that like the creepiest stuff happening is like, or the supernatural like creepy stuff is like on YouTube, or like what people like sort of record or whatever. I don't know. But anyways, I think Carrie is one of those movies where it's just like, when I think of a horror movie, she's definitely up there. Definitely up there. Obviously there's Halloween, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, but there's just, when you think about like, I'm trying to, Scream is another one. I don't know, I guess I'm just more so like thinking in terms of like a woman in horror. I can't really, maybe that's me. That's probably my fault that I can't. I'm sure there are plenty. I can't think of any. But my point being is that when I think of women in horror, they're usually like the victims. They're usually the ones that get away, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which she gets away, or Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis, or Scream with, I think it's, is it Courtney Cox in that one? I don't remember. I think it's her, but I don't know if she gets away in the end. And then yeah, they just always turn out to be like the victims, you know. They don't turn out to be the actual. Well, I guess the case could be made that Carrie's a victim too, of her circumstances, of her mother, of her high school and friends and bullies and whatever. But like, she's the actual like one causing the horror aspect. You know what I mean? But anyways, I think that Carrie is kind of one of those horror movies that everybody's kind of seen. You know what I mean? Nobody, if I mention Carrie, nobody's going to be like, what's that? Unless they're like really young. But even then, they'll get the plot of it or whatever pretty quickly. So, I don't know. Overall, I think that, you know what would be crazy? If they did an animated Carrie. So that way they wouldn't have to do all the practical effects. Like they could do, oh snap, that'd be crazy if they did an animated Carrie. That way they could like, make it like a 4-part, yes. Make it like a 4-part episode. Or like, I don't know, 4-part, 4-episode series, like limited series of like the thing. It's like the first hour is going to be like, you know, the first episode will be about her school life. And then the second episode will be her home life. And then the third episode will be the prom. And then the fourth episode will be the aftermath. Or like, what did everybody learn from all of this? You know what I mean? I don't know. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty interesting. That way they could like animate it, you know, probably just as creepy. Yeah, I think there's something there. There's something there. Maybe there already is an animated Carrie. But anyways, I watching Carrie is, it has to be a canon event. It has to be it's just one of those movies where, you know, you watch it because it's like kind of a focus point of horror movies, you know? So I don't know. I really like the movie. I think it's horror personified quite well through social issues like parental abuse, bullying at school, how it all contributes to a person's mindset. And while we don't all get like, you know, telekinetic superpowers, it is possible for us to like harm other people and to push people to that point. And it's just, yeah, it's scary, you know? So overall, I think it's a classic. It's a classic horror movie, and everybody who's seen it pretty much agrees, and everybody who hasn't just is scared of it, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.